Welcome to the course Pattern Making 4. This course focuses on the technique of making traditional Indian costume for both men and women. The course comprises of 6 units. The first unit, Introduction to the Traditional Indian Garments, reviews the evolution and use of different type of garments during the various periods and by the different people. The final review section invites you to reflect on what you have learnt. By the end of this unit, students will be able to list Indian traditional wear based on different emperors, category the traditional Indian categories. By the end of this unit, students will be able to list Indian traditional wear based on different emperors, categorize the traditional Indian garment based on region, list the fabric type used for Indian wear from ancient time, and distinguish the design features of traditional Indian wear influenced by various emperors. Indus Valley Civilization. Based on evidences obtained from the residue mobs of copper and impressions perceived in clay, we can conclude that during this civilization, the indigo and the turmeric were used as dyeing agents. Indian spices of silkworm were used for obtaining silk. Harappians had abundant supplies of Mesopotamian wool textiles, as there was a frequent trade carrier out between Harappians and Mesopotamians. Skins of various animals might have been used for making belts, quiveries, etc. And reeds of straws might have been made use for making sandals. Men wore a cloth around the waist which resembles a modern day dhotis, as it passed between the legs and was tucked behind. It is believed that women wore knee-length cloth around the waist. Choli or blouse was not in use. Let's move on to the Vedic period. It was in this era that the people started learning the art of weaving and stitching clothes. The clothes of this period are regarded as a traditional attire of Indian, as they were designed and owned by the people. Men and women used a lot of metal or bead ornaments. Garments merely covered the waist. Men binds of the lower garment was tight, and more women it was not so tight. Based on social status, they used a light or loose upper garment. Royal people appeared in golden robes. Men also wear headgears called turban, which was tied in different regional styles. Next, we will look at Mauryan and Sunga periods. During this period, the people wear unstitched clothes like Vedic period. The most important piece of clothes in attire, which was made from cotton, linen or muslin, and was at the time fitted with a gold and precious stone embroideries. Men draped cloth around his hips and legs in a kacha style and reached till the ankle. It was fitted at the waist using a sashes or kayabandan, which is tied with a loop in the center. There can be a different type of sashes. The third most important type of clothing was the attire, which was mostly made up of cotton and rarely made up of silk and was used to cover the upper part of the body. Women tied the attire in many ways. A simple small attire or strip of cloth, langoti, was attached to the kayaband, the center front, then passed between the leg and tucked it at the back. Then an elaborate type of attire was worn in kacha style or lehenga style. In addition, women wore a patka, which is a decorative piece of cloth attached to kayaban, front by tucking in one end at the waist. The patka, made from plaited wool or cotton twist yarn in leather, and at the time was woven. In remote villages, the people wore unbleached cotton clothes, and in most backward area, the clothes were made of grass, skin, and fur. Women mostly cover heads with uttaria, worn straight on cross or decorate with the beautiful borders. Men wear remarkable headdresses in which the hair is often twisted into a braid with a turban cloth. Now on to the early Satavahana period. During the first century, the garments were a mixture of foreign and indigenous style and an inclusion of the Mauryan style of dressing. The Mauryan influences was evident in the first half, whereas later Kushan influences seemed to be apparent. In the first century, there were tunics which different from Scythian style, and the cushions or shacks and had ruched sleeve and crosswise is the front. Kayabans were worn around once or twice around the waist. Also, elaborate turban were worn around the head, decorated beautifully. The women also changed their attire by using short antaria, large uttaria with elaborate borders covering the head and the back. Other than the skirt, they were more or less like the Lombardies, who were the gypsies tribe of today. In the early stages, everyone wore Parsi style garments, and the people they were ruling wore Indus style garments from the Mauryan team. Gradually, the two costume style mixed, and eventually by the time of Guptas, most people were wearing Hindu style garments. Next, we move on to the Gupta period. The Aryan attire was worn in Gupta time in various forms. If it was worn long, then the pleat could be worn in the kacha sari style, tucked in at the back of the waist, or as a lehenga tucked in the front or at the side. The lower garment gradually became the gagri or drawstring skirt with small pleats all around the waistline. Sometimes a girdle was worn over it at the waist to keep it tight. Many forms of cut and sewn garments became fashionable in the Gupta era. The tunic, which was worn by most of the population, turned into a brocade tunic with sleeves worn by ministers and countries outside the palace. However, the Aryan Antaria, Uttaria, and Kaiban remain the favorites of king and nobles when at home and their palaces. The Sultanate costumes. A loose, long flowing robe with a sash at the waistline, sometimes made of brightly patterned cotton fabric. Above this, a long sleeveless waistcoat type of a garment which is colder weather would have been made of wool. The most important garment for men of the time would have been the turban. This was sometimes of enormous sizes with fabric wound around the head many times. It was usually white in color. Sultanate turban were wound tightly around a skull cap with the end of an left dangling at the back. In literacy references to clothing of the Sultan period, mention it made of an assortment of stitched garment, one on top of the other, These garments were usually worn and embellished with a golden embroidery. Initially, women must have worn the layered, loose, very well covered cloth and burqa of Arabian countries. When arrival in India, the modest, conservative style of Muslim women clothing changed into a more feminine mode of dress. Due to this climate, the lifestyle of the harem, the Muslim women seeing the nature of the clothes worn by the Hindu women. Rajput costumes. Women used a variety of costume. The earliest Gagra is seen here, sculptures in paintings, and was a simple length of fabric stitched like a tube with a drawstring waist. As more fabric was added, it changed from a simple straight garment into a full skirt using up to 20 meters of fabric. The choli or blouse is a scintillation garment that was probably quite loose, warm, with a long sleeve and probably made of wool. In India, the climate forced a change to the cotton or silk. The tight choli, shaped with a short sleeve, developed around 500 AD, and the choli which no back and only the string also appears some hundreds of years ago. The odhini or dupatta was a fine long piece of fabric worn over the head. It has been worn in India for thousands of years. Even from the Indus Valley civilization days, it was called upavarsana in the Orient culture and medieval Hindu culture. The kanchili is a sleeveless garment worn down to the hip over the choli or gagra. It has a long, low neckline and can sometimes be made a transparent embroidery fabric. The rural Rajasthani men today wear a shirt and a shawl over a dhoti, which is the traditional dress of northern India men for thousands of years. For early time, all across the cold area of Persia and Afghanistan, men wore a heavy coat. This coat was as plain or as luxurious as the wearer could afford. The basic shape did not change. It had long sleeve and was down to about the knee length. It opened at the front and usually buttoned. In northern India, the invaders wore a heavy, warm cloth, but as the Indian climate got warmer, this was removed or a light version was worn. The version which has now come down to us in the sharwani, the traditional Rajput coat, nowadays worn with the churidar pajamas and dupattas. The angarkha is a long-sleeved gown. Its origins seem to be at least 1000 years before the Mughals. It was a favorite garment for Indus even after the Mughal came. It is still worn in rural part of India. The name angarkha is derived from Sanskrit where word angarakshaka, defender of limbs, indicating an Aryan origin. The Mughal jama, Rajput women often wore embroidered angarkha instead of a kanchili. This is hemmed with a gold or silver jardosi. Apart from Punjab, where it has a religious meaning, most of the states in India have stopped wearing the turban as a permanent piece of clothing. Rajasthan turban in Rajasthan are compulsory. They are long, multiple color and come in a variety of shapes. We had imagined the origin Rajput from Orient time wearing a turban like this. Every small area of kingdom had a particular style of a color of turban. It is possible to recognize where a man come from by examining his turban today. Mughal costume. Babur wore Mughal clothing and Humayun wore a lighter version of traditional Mughal tunics. Emperor Humayun around 1550, or a layered look composed of a strip nima, blue long sleeve shirt, a length sleeve Asian style tunic, a purple choha with short sleeves. Mughal costume has not disappeared even though the Mughal have been gone for 300 years. The ladies' Kagra Pajama and Parsi Pajama are still worn. Men in northern India still wear a salwar. The churidar is still a favorite leg wear for women and men today. The angarkha is also still worn. The attire jama originated in Persia and Central Asia, where it was worn both short and long length over a pajama to form outfit known as the basgag. In Persian, the word jama means garment, robe, gown or coat. The definition of the Mughal jama is a side-fastening frock coat with a tight-fitting bodice, nipped in waist and flared skirt reaching the knee level. The jama was probably first seen in India at the time of Kushan around 200 AD. The jama of Persia, made of thick, would not be appropriate for hot India. In fine cotton weaves were used and the jama developed a style of its own. Originally, it had a straight skirt, but it appeared panels gave the skirt a fuller shape. This was before the Mughal came. Akbar made some changes around 1580, making it suitable for royal use. As ironing out so much fabric would have proved a problem, so a sophisticated technique of crinkling and ruching was developed called tunic. By 1600s, the jama had evolved into a very flamboyant garment. Around the waist of the jama, a long piece of fine fabric was tied like a sash. This was the patka, from which a jewelled sword could be suspended. The patka were hand woven with the complex designs or embroidery and had painted or printed. Many made of a royalty showed textile craftsmanship and it's the best. This is a very ancient garment seen all throughout Persian, Mughalian and other areas. The word koha in Mughal times referred to a long sleeved coat open down the front, usually down to hip length or knee length. By the medieval period, chohas in India were made loose enough to own over angarkhas, jamas and other garments. Some were very ornate and embroidered. The bahalbandi was another ornate embroidered waistcoat worn over the jama. Women wear a number of costumes. Pashwas is a loose jama-like robe fastened at the front with tied at the waist, usually high-waisted and long-sleeve. Sometimes several fine transparent muslin pashwas were worn for a layered look. Sometimes a choli was worn under the pashwas. Yalik is a long undertunic reaching to the floor, usually with short sleeve or sleeveless. Pajama, a compound of two Persian words, pai meaning leg or feet and jama meaning cover. Drawstring pajama have been worn in Persia since very ancient time. From about 1530 onwards, several types of pajamas were worn in India. The most common siddha was wide at the waist and tapering down to the ankle, worn by men and women. Churidar was cut on the bias, much longer than leg so that the folds fall at the ankle, worn by men and women. Calendar is a very full wide bottom pajama consisting of panels, worn by men and women. Salwar is a triangular cut pajama with a quilted band at the ankle, worn by men and women. Dilja is a woman's pajama made of silk cut wide and straight. Gagra is a woman's pajama cut loose to the knee and adding gathers. Farsi is a woman's pajama cut without folds to the knee line and then gather into your pleated to the floor. Finally, we will look at the clothing of the Parsis. When the Izzids, Zoroastrian men wore the traditional Persian craft or tunic with a shawl or a coat over it. When they arrived in Gujarat, men continued to wear the long kaftan tied at the waistline and with the turban around the head. Women wore white salwars, long sleeve kameez and the shawl which was tied around the head like cap. Some women are shown wearing a half burqa over the clothes with a fringing hood. When they arrived in Gujarat, women started to wear the Gujarati sari but with a few slight style changes. Parsi women have always brought the pallu down over the right shoulder, not the left. The traditional Parsi sari made of embroidered fabric is called a gagra. Many aged Parsi ladies have one of these in their trunks. Although the true gagra is not been available since 1950, these embroidered fabric were made in China throughout the 19th and early 20th century. They were brought to Bombay by peddlers who sold them in wealthy Parsi women in their house. A peddlers got to know these women personally because one man would go to the same house year after the year, and his son or a grandson would sell the ladies of the same houses. The full roll fabric would often be purchased and Parsi ladies would have women stitch a sari length of a crepe, silk or chiffon underneath. Many ladies would stitch a border of embroidery fabric on an Indian sari. You have reached the end of this unit. To summarize, this unit has reviewed evolution, use of clothes during the various periods of time in India. Thank you.